Hello, my name is Valerie Zwicky, and these are my partners, Sophia and Megan. We are Ithemba, and we are working on a low-cost biopsy solution for developing countries. 500,000. This is how many women die from breast cancer every year. Over 1.6 million women are diagnosed with breast cancer annually. The incidence rate of breast cancer is pretty evenly split between the developed and developing countries. Then why, I ask you, are triple the number of women in developing countries dying from breast cancer each year? Why should the location of a woman's home impact her chance of survival? As a woman's cancer progresses to later stages, her chances of survival shrinks. In the US, 17% of diagnoses are at an advanced stage of cancer. In South Africa, however, half of these diagnoses are at an advanced stage. As a woman's cancer progresses, so her chances of survival shrink. So our goal is to increase access to earlier diagnosis to empower these patients to go seek treatment earlier and better their chance of survival. 2 years ago, our teammates traveled to local hospitals and rural clinics and saw the burdens these women face firsthand. I'm going to walk you through the journey of a typical patient in a low and mid-income country. Let's call this patient Myra. Now I want you all to imagine Myra is sitting at home and feels a suspicious lump on her breast. She's uncertain of what this is, so she travels to her local clinic 15 miles away looking for an answer. She doesn't find one. Her local clinic does not have biopsy capability. So Myra is referred to another hospital, has to take another day off work, travel 50 miles, and still is referred again. Myra now has to travel 160 miles to get to her central hospital to finally receive her biopsy. After traveling a total of 200 miles, Myra has now spent $45 on transportation costs, which is 34% of her weekly income. I want us to pause and look at the time from when Myra initially suspected that she had breast cancer to when she finally got that biopsy. 10 weeks have passed. Now compare this to a woman in the US who only had to wait 2 weeks to receive that same biopsy. I ask you, don't all women deserve equal access to health care? Ithemba's goal is to increase access to earlier diagnosis and empower patients to go seek treatment earlier to better their chance of survival. Our teammates saw the stark differences between the US and developing countries when we visited these hospitals. This drives us every single day to work on this cause. In Zulu, Ithemba means hope. And this is our daily reminder of the cause we are fighting for and the hope that we wish to instill in women that they will beat this disease.
We aim to give women hope because currently there are no adequate solutions for core needle biopsy on the market for developing countries. Currently, when providers want to perform a core needle biopsy, they have two options. The first option would be to use a disposable device, and the second, a reusable device. Disposable devices dominate the US market. However, they can cost anywhere between $40 to $200, which is far too expensive for many hospitals, especially in the developing world. Reusable devices, on the other hand, present the potential to save hospitals a lot of money. However, the current reusable devices on the market become internally contaminated and are not safe for use. As you can see in this photo here, sent to us by the Butaro Cancer Clinic in Rwanda, blood has traveled from the needle into the reusable portion of the device, making it unsafe for use. This forced the cancer clinic to choose between either straining their budget to purchase disposable devices or not being able to perform biopsies at all. No solutions on the market are adequate for developing countries. Low-level healthcare providers need an affordable, safe, easy-to-use core needle biopsy mechanism so that they can provide earlier diagnosis at a lower level to patients. Ithemba meets these needs. Ithemba's solution is a reusable driver with disposable needles that trap contamination. These needles prevent any blood or other contaminants from traveling to the reusable portion of the device, making our device durable and easy to clean. Because our device eliminates any risk of contamination, we present the option to low-level hospitals and clinics to purchase a reusable, affordable device that will spread earlier diagnostic capability in many areas. In 2016 to 2017, we began to tackle this concept by developing an attachment to the existing barred magnum reusable device. This attachment allows the needle to operate outside of the device and click on so that no contamination is able to enter the reusable portion. This device is currently patent pending. This makes the cleaning process much simpler. The barred magnum currently takes about an hour to 2 hours to clean because of the risk of contamination, and can take even up to 24 hours to clean, which limits its ability to be able to be used on other patients. Our solution, however, because no contamination will be able to enter the reusable portion, will be a simple 3-minute cleaning procedure, reducing cleaning time and labor by 95%.
This reduction in cleaning time is just one of many factors that allows our device to be superior to the other devices targeted for low resource settings. Our device is the only device in this space that can make an impact in low resource settings because of its low cost, prevention of internal contamination, and reusability. Looking at the market, we are looking at the global breast biopsy market, which is a huge market of $1.2 billion. Within this market, core needle biopsy devices comprise about half. We are initially targeting the developing world core needle biopsy market because we want to make a difference in the lives of women worldwide. This market is currently $24.5 million and growing as breast cancer diagnosis and awareness rises worldwide. We also see our device having an impact in the developed world, such as in the United States, because of its sustainability and low cost. We will be pricing the reusable portion of our device at $1,600 for the reusable driver and $15 for the disposable needles. This is a 50% markup over our manufacturing costs. We are planning to leverage existing relationships and interests from global health organizations worldwide to bring our device to market. In 2019, we will be implementing our device at 20 hospitals. We anticipate each of these hospitals will purchase 2 reusable driver devices, perform 2 core needle biopsy procedures each day, 5 days a week for 48 weeks of the year. This amounts to 40 devices being purchased, the reusable devices being purchased in our first year, and 9,600 disposable needles, for a net sales of $200,000 in our first year. In 2020, we'll reach 60 hospitals, and by 2021, we'll implement our device in 180 hospitals. This map is a representation of diagnostic capabilities worldwide. There are so many areas where women simply do not have access to the diagnosis they desperately need. We want the map to look like this. We want to make sure that each woman can access the diagnosis they need, and she and her family will be empowered to move through the breast cancer treatment process if she needs to. By 2022, we'll implement our device at 360 hospitals for a net sales of over $3 million. And most importantly, we'll be reaching the lives of over 300,000 women. This is critically important to us because we want to provide these women and their families with an earlier diagnosis, and within our first 4 years of operations, we can do this for 300,000 families worldwide. Going forward, we currently have $40,000 of grant funding, and we will be using this over the next few months to conduct customer interviews in Peru, South Africa, and India, to transfer our device to manufacturing, and to develop a training procedure so that when our device is implemented, it can be used by these people in different countries. We are seeking additional funding to apply for a CE mark, We want to make sure that regardless of the setting our device is used in, it has the proper regulatory approval and is up to the highest standards of regulation. We will also be beginning a clinical trial at the Hopkins Clinic, which Valerie mentioned earlier our teammates visited 2 years ago. And we will be continuing to move forward in our partnerships with global health organizations to ensure that our device rollout goes smoothly. We are a team of 6 female biomedical engineering students working to make the difference in the women's lives worldwide. We have a wide variety of skills and interests such as testing, regulatory affairs, clinical affairs, business, and prototyping, and we believe that we are perfectly suited to attack this problem. We are all extremely passionate about global health, and we know that we can make a difference in the lives of women worldwide. We are women working for women. This is critically important to us because we think of these patients, they could be our mothers, they could be our grandmothers, they could even be us one day, and we know how important this diagnosis is and how uncertain it can be for families when they simply cannot find this diagnosis over and over and over again. We have a great network of advisors and sponsors who have helped us tremendously through this process. We would not be where we are today without their feedback and advice. When a woman receives a breast cancer diagnosis, we do not want her to think of it as a death sentence. We want her and her family to be empowered to move through the steps of the breast cancer treatment after she has received an earlier diagnosis. We want to give these women hope. Thank you.
Questions from the judges, please.
Your $800 manufacturing cost, what kind of volumes is that tied to?
Yeah, that would definitely shift as we have larger manufacturing. Obviously, our first few runs, what we're looking for initial funding in is to create 15 devices, so really smooth out the manufacturing process, and then we see the volume being about probably 1,000 to 2,000 devices, each kind of probably every 6 months, just as we roll out, and then continuing to iterate that. We really hope to get the cost down over time, but at first it will be a little bit higher, and then it will go back down.
Okay. I also meant to tell you, great job.
Very good job.
I love your idea. I had the benefit of seeing a little bit of your presentation yesterday. I have a few questions about the process of testing. So there's the core needle, the biopsy is done, and don't you need a monitor in order to see what you're taking out of the breast tissue? Okay, so do these low-resource hospitals have those monitors?
Yes, you need an ultrasound to perform the procedure. So in many clinics, they do have ultrasound, but also if the tumor is large enough, you can actually just feel for it and take the sample that way. So reaching out to the really low resource settings where we would see women having these later stage presentations potentially, we could give them a diagnosis sooner without the ultrasound, but in a lot of settings they do have an ultrasound, at least one in the hospital, and we've actually heard of some really cool work done that's making a smartphone app that's an ultrasound. So we think that kind of aspect of the problem is really close to being solved. Like ultrasound is becoming, there's a lot of innovation in ultrasound it seems like right now. So we see those solutions linking in with our solutions and then kind of those two coming together. So we don't see the ultrasound being a huge problem in the implementation of the device, but that is an important factor to consider.
Mm-hmm. And then is your patent global?
We just filed a patent in the US and then we plan to file a PCT and then go into different countries. We're going to do a larger business case study on which countries we should actually go into because obviously filing in every country is pretty expensive, so we want to make sure that we're targeting the right places for this device.
Right, and there are services that do lower cost translation to bring that cost down for global patents. The U.S. market, I mean, of course, it takes money to give money. The U.S. market is quite large, and I saw in your plan that you plan to do licensing. So if you're manufacturing the unit already, is there any way around the U.S. licensing? Because then you could control distribution, you could make more money to fund your underdeveloped countries.
Yes, that is a good point and definitely something we're looking to explore more. We recently filed the patent on that device that links in with the BARD device, so we're hoping to have a conversation with BARD or another larger manufacturer of biopsy devices in the coming months to figure out if that's a viable option. We participated in ICOR last January, and so we got a really good feel for what the needs are in the U.S., and we did notice that there is some hospitals that feel that low cost is really important to them, and they were interested in this device, so we definitely want to do some more kind of testing of that market because it is a huge market, and that would be a really great option.
Yeah, and on top of those 50 stakeholder interviews that Megan just mentioned that we conducted in the U.S., our clinical advisor actually has a connection with Hologic, which is a medical device company that's big in the biopsy space. So we've reached out to them, and that's one of the big companies that we're planning to talk to. And we want to move forward with that connection.
I think that's a really, really good idea. Your patents, in my experience, patents are only as good as your ability to defend them. And you can end up spending a lot of money on something that could be better used, to really help your mission. What I loved about this, by the way, and Dr. Williams said it, great job. I mean, just a great job.
Thank you so much.
And wonderful to see that there's a values-driven component first and foremost. You're helping people. You're women helping women. It does seem like it's a massive undertaking, and I have to say, I have to applaud you. When I read the plan last night late on a plane, I loved how thorough you were, and how you sort of buttoned up all these points of proof. I would just caution, the spending of money on patents, and that if some of that time and energy could potentially be devoted to finding licensing partners, and there's probably a little bit of a, I'll use a term that may not sound so friendly, a Robin Hood component here, right? We have this huge market here. You might be able to help a lot of people here, and through a licensing program here, get expansion of your product, in these markets very quickly, and then use proceeds from that to go help folks in these other parts of the world that don't have ready access like we do here. But really, it was a wonderful presentation.
Yeah.
We recently spoke to a company called UE Life Sciences also, and they have a device called the iBreast exam that's been distributed through GE Healthcare in 25 countries. So that was a really interesting. Their technology goes a step before kind of the mammogram, so it can feel for different tumor densities. So that was really interesting to hear that their partnership with GE Healthcare has really helped expand their market, and that's a really interesting perspective too, to get a licensing agreement with the world potentially. So that could be a great option.
Yeah. Or just to do exactly what you're doing, but help those folks who may have something, extant that you could then take out into the world, for them with your model. Because sometimes there are things you can patent that are processes more than they are devices, right? And sometimes you can just do something because you can get a big stage, and get a jump on everybody and outgood them. Take something existing and broaden it out fast.
As the resident federal employee on the judges panel, I see that to begin the trial, you need the CE mark. Start your paperwork early. We're not known to be fast. So what's involved with the CE mark? What obstacles?
I think just getting basically our device ready to be tested, because for a lot of these regulatory approvals, you just need to show that it was equivalent to former devices, so just giving really good testing results. And we're lucky that our project is very mechanically based, so we just need to get tissue samples, and we've modeled the tissue with polymer, and you can actually also use chicken or turkey breast. So you can just kind of show that you have the weight and length of samples that are correct, because the pathologist, if they have the right size sample, can analyze that. So that's nice. The regulatory hurdle isn't too big. We just need to show that the testing is in line. So I think that's the biggest hurdle, is just the speed that we can get those testing results.
Great.
And we actually had a really interesting conversation with the FDA last year, where they said that we could approve this device for all soft tissue biopsies. So that was really interesting too, because that would give us a really wide approval. So that'd be great.
That's wonderful. Look into, I know Homeland Security is not a fit from this perspective, but there's a lot of incubation opportunities from the government, and they will help you jump through hurdles and co-fund you. So there might be something, I'm certain.
Yeah, we heard a presentation about the SBIR grants recently, so that's something that we're interested
Yeah,
in.
definitely look into
in a
that.
few months, yeah.
Then you get the feds on your side, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Yes.
I thought you all did a great presentation, and that the fact that you're looking at both the U.S. and the international market is very innovative and will really help you going forward. There's some consultants in D.C., like John Snow Inc., that do a lot of work in Africa that might be able to help you with looking at your data analytics and your decision points. And one of the questions I have for you is, when you're going to do your clinical trial in South Africa, how are you going to do that, and do you know what your outcome endpoints are going to try and be?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to South Africa this summer for 7 weeks to work on this project, to talk to healthcare workers, nurses, and patients, and get feedback on our device. And when I'm there, I'm going to continue to make connections. We already have some connections with the local Mala clinic that we were talking about that our teammates have previously visited. I'm going to be working at a different hospital, so we can make connections there as well as traveling to like Johannesburg, which is not as rural, but just talking to a bunch of different radiologists there to really get our feet on the ground so we can get this clinical trial to be implemented.
With that, please join me in thanking the team from Johns Hopkins.